Hey everyone, it's Justin here at This Just In. I'm here to bring you yet another booktube tag. This one is the Efftup tag. I was tagged by Shelly Swearingen. She was kind enough to tag me at the front of her Jane Austen video. I thought it was really nice of her to do that, to make a special shout out to me and to tag me especially at the beginning of that video. That was really cool. It was a nice surprise to see. I really appreciate that, Shelly. Thank you very much. And this is a pretty good tag for me. I hope I can live up to the expectation here. This tag was created by Daniel Guilty Feet, and I've seen it come around a few times. And yeah, I hope I can live at some of the selections. I've seen some pretty good stuff out there, some unique things, and I hope that I can bring something unique to this tag as well. So here we go with our first prompt: a book that was effed up in a good way. This is one of the ones I struggle with a little bit. I like a lot of good effed up books, but this one came to my mind. It's a historical novel, Aztec by Gary Jennings, and it's one of the few, if only the only historical novel that I've probably read. But it tells this history of the Aztec Empire. It's told to the fictional character of Misli. It's a fantastic, it's a very detailed story, and it's really it's written lovely, and it has lots of effed up violence and sex stuff in it, all throughout the book. There are scenes that still, it's been a couple of decades since I've read it, and there are scenes that still stick with me to this day, and probably some that I've forgotten. There's one early scene that stands out in particular where there's some men at a quarry, and they're carrying some stone, and they drop the stone, and it cuts someone in half, and it perfectly seals both halves of his body. And this is how we start that. This is the first 40 pages of the book, and it gets kind of more effed up from there. So yeah, Gary Jennings, Aztec, highly recommend. There are a couple of other books in the series, I guess some sequels that I started one and didn't end up finishing it. So I'm not sure how they hold up to the first one, but the first one it is pretty much a classic. So our second tag, a book that was effed up in a bad way. Okay, this was a little easier for me. The Dogs of Babel by Carolyn Parkhurst. This is a novel about a linguist Paul, whose wife dies when she falls out of a tree, and he's not there, but their dog was there. And there are some strange circumstances, I guess, around her death, and like the books are rearranged on the shelves, and it's kind of weird, but the dog was the only being that was there. And so the guy decides that he wants to teach his dog how to talk, so the dog can tell him what happened, how and why his wife died. Well, I guess why, not how she fell out of the tree. And so he ends up involved in this society of people who are also interested in getting dogs to talk and communicating with dogs. But their deal is that they want to surgically alter dogs so that they can speak human language, so that they can produce human sounds. And it all kind of culminates in this scene where he goes to a meeting of this society of people, and they have a dog who they've surgically altered, and the dog, I don't want to say the dog gives a speech at the podium, but that's what their expectation is. And the dog just, this is a lot of spoiler stuff here, so spoiler for a really terrible book. At least I thought. If somebody loved this book, I'm sorry, but I couldn't stand it. Anyway, the dog of course isn't communicating. The dog is just making sounds that are human-like sounds because of what they've done to the poor animal. And so that's really effed up. And in the end, spoiler again, and I do this because I really couldn't stand the book. Of course she committed suicide. And of course she rearranged the books herself to give some sort of a message, and the whole thing is just so ridiculous. And I think I probably threw the book across the room when I finished it. So yeah, The Dogs of Babel by Carolyn Parkhurst, I do not recommend. It is effed up in a bad way. Let's see, third prompt, a book that everyone loved but you think is just effed up. I struggled with this one a bit. Richard Lehman came to mind. I don't know that everybody loves that book though, but it's pretty effed up. But I did several videos on that Richard Lehman book already, so I don't need to revisit Richard Lehman. But I think maybe I'll take the easy way out. And Chuck Palahniuk, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Chuck Palahniuk's Haunted. This is the book with the story Guts in it. Yeah, he's just a try hard. It's just try. Fight Club was okay. The movie was miles better, and then I read this and was not. It just seemed like a teenage kid trying to be shocking, and the thing that happens in Guts, that if you know of it, you know what's happened, and I'm just not going to describe it. That has actually happened to people before. That what happens at the bottom so it's pretty effed up, and it was not great. I don't know what he was after. If he was after something that I missed, fine, okay, maybe I should give him another, give him the benefit of the doubt, but it was just stupid, effed up, just for the sake of being effed up, in my opinion. I'm sorry for any Chuck fans out there. Effed up. Let's see. Okay, here we go. I wish I had some of these books to hold up. I'm sorry, I don't have them. These effed up books have just drifted away as time goes by, which that's kind of effed up, isn't it? Anyway, fourth prompt, Sexy A effed up. All right, this one, prepare yourself. This one, American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Yeah. The story, of course, the story of Patrick Bateman, serial killer, investment broker. We know the movie, of course. If you've read the book, you know the book. There are scenes of sex in here that are detailed in a way that, removed from the overall, I think, context of the book and removed from what happens immediately after, or to a certain point, are this sexy in this erotica kind of way, and then what happens afterwards happens, and he is who he is, and he does what he does, and the horrifying effed up things that happen. But just this sort of, we go this one direction, and then it is effed up, and the things that happen in it are effed up, and some of the most effed up things are sex related, and yeah, this is not for everybody. Be warned. There are things that happen in this book that you cannot unread. So good luck to you. Let's go on to number 5, Effed Up for Kids. I had a couple of different thoughts on this one. I do have this one that crossed my mind to talk about. In a Dark, Dark Room by retold by Alvin Schwartz, with art by Dirk Zimmer. This is the same Alvin Schwartz who did the Scary Stories series of the 3 Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Did I get the title right? Which those books are also effed up in their own way, with some great effed up illustrations by, what was the guy's name? Stephen Gamel. This is not that, but this is effed up in its own way. There's some pretty great illustrations in here that are pretty effed up. But really, the thing I think I wanted to mention, kids book that I think is pretty effed up, is The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. It has this nice feel to it overall, but really, if you just think about it, just more than a few seconds, it's kind of awful in how this tree gives almost everything of itself. And the boy, though the boy loves the tree in the beginning, the boy, as he grows older, seems to have no feeling for the tree other than, this is somewhere where I can just get what I need. I can take, and the tree gives, and I don't need to thank the tree. And it's kind of effed up in that it's a sad ending, really. It is a bit of a sad ending, with the boy as an old man sitting on the stump of the tree, and the tree is happy. The tree thinks it's happy, or the tree is happy. The boy seems content, but boy, there's not much left of the tree, is there? I don't know. It always struck me as a pretty effed up children's book. But I don't. If somebody's finds it touching and not disturbing or effed up, I apologize. I'm not trying to kick your book around, but okay. An effed up classic. I picked a short story for this one. This is a short story that when I read it had a pretty big impact on me. It haunted me for years, for decades since I read it. I think I read it in school. And this is The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, written, first published in, I think, the New Yorker magazine in 1948. If you've read it, you know, but it's the story of a town or a village, and they have a lottery, and people drop papers out of a box, and if you get the right paper, well, I mean, okay, it's a classic, so we've all read it, right? Hopefully, if you haven't read it, please read it. It's disturbing and terrifying and effed up. And at the end, when we find out what the lottery means, it just changes your view of the whole story, of course, and it shook me to my core. It is one of the most effed up classic things that I can recall having read. So let's move on to number 7, effed up in translation. Perfume by Patrick Suskind. I think this was originally written in German. I read this years and years ago when it first came along. This is the story of an orphan. His name is Grenouille. He's French man, and he grows up and he has this amazing sense of smell, and he has no morals at all. Obviously, if we go through the book, you'll find, but he has this sense of smell that he's almost like Daredevil, in which he can use his smell, almost like Daredevil can use his radar sense or his enhanced senses. But Grenouille, he ends up searching for the perfect smell, and he finds that he can extract smell from humans. And he can extract the essence of their smell from humans. And of course, he goes on a killing spree to find that perfect smell to make his cologne. He makes colognes or perfumes. Of course, the title of the book is Perfume. And the end is so effed up. It's very effed up. So that if nothing else makes the book effed up, that ending will pushes it over into effed up land, if you will. Okay, so that moves us on to effed up nonfiction. All right, so my father used to work in Yellowstone National Park, and this was one of the most popular books in the park. My dad drove a tour bus through the park, and he always said this is the most popular book. He lamented that there are far better books, but this is the most popular one in the park. Death in Yellowstone. It tells you of all the different ways people have died in the Yellowstone Park, by accident, murder, any way you can think of dying in the park. It's happened. It's detailed in this book, and there is no less effed up portion of the book than the opening pages. Let me read to you the opening page or two of Death in Yellowstone. This is the first chapter. Hold Fast to Your Children is the name of this chapter. It is a mystery why anyone would dive headfirst into a Yellowstone hot spring merely to save a dog. But that is precisely what happened on July 20th, 1981. David Allen Kerwin, 24, of La Canada, California, and his friend Roland Ratliff, 25, of Thousand Oaks, parked their truck at Yellowstone's Fountain Paint Pot parking lot at around 1 o'clock that afternoon. While the men looked at the hot springs, Ratliff's dog Moosey, a large mastiff or Great Dane, escaped from the vehicle and jumped into nearby Celestine Pool. A hot spring later measured at 202 degrees Fahrenheit. The dog began yelping, and someone nearby quipped, "Oh, look, the poor thing." Kerwin and Ratliff rushed to the spring and stood on the edge of it. Ratliff and another bystander both saw that Kerwin was preparing to go into the spring, and the bystander yelled, "Don't go in there!" Kerwin yelled back, "Like hell I won't." Several more people yelled not to go in, but Kerwin took 2 steps into the pool, then dove headfirst into the boiling water. One witness described it as a flying swimming pool-type dive. Visitor Earl Welsh of Anniston, Alabama saw Kerwin actually swim to the dog and attempt to take it to shore, go completely underwater again, then release the dog and begin trying to climb out. Roland Ratliff pulled Kerwin from the spring, sustaining second-degree burns to his feet. Welch saw Kerwin appear to stagger backwards, so the visitor hastened to him and said, "Give me your hand." Kerwin offered his hand, and Welch directed, "Come to the sidewalk." As they moved slowly toward the walk, Kerwin managed to say, "That was stupid. How bad am I?" Welch tried to reassure him, and before they reached the walkway, Kerwin again spoke softly, "That was a stupid thing I did." I'll spare you the details of what happens to a man's body when he is immersed in 200-degree Fahrenheit water, but let's just say it's pretty effed up, and he did not survive. And you can read about that incident and more in Death in Yellowstone. There were a lot of nonfiction books I probably could have chosen from. This is the one that I have read that passage over and over again because it's just drawn to this haunting tale, this horrifying tale of this poor man trying to save this poor dog. And just the outcome is pretty terrifying. So there's our nonfiction Efftup, Death in Yellowstone. If you ever visit Yellowstone National Park, give it a look. But let's move on to our illustrated Efftup. I picked, well, there's a couple things I thought I might talk about. The Walking Dead is pretty effed up. You've seen the TV show. The TV show itself, there's plenty of effed up stuff in the TV show. The book is, of course, more effed up than the TV show. And I think it is better than the TV show. And yeah, there are things that happen in here. This is one of those books where you turn the page and the full display, the full image on the next page just drops your jaw, and you can't believe what you're seeing. The Walking Dead, of course, and I'm going to give us a twofer here because our other illustrated effed up will be, for me, Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Preacher, I remember when this first came around and picking up the comic books and opening up and leafing through it and just being, maybe I was a little more innocent back then, but the stuff I saw in there shocked me to my core. So of course I bought it and read it. And it is pretty effed up. This is the story of a Texas preacher, Jesse Custer. He is possessed by the offspring that is the result of a mating between an angel and a demon. The offspring is named Genesis. It's possessed Jesse here. It's made him very powerful. And when Genesis was born, if I recall correctly, when Genesis is born, God abandons heaven, and Jesse heads out with his friend, or his ex-girlfriend Tulip, and a vampire, an Irish drunk Irish vampire. It's in the book. Whose name I forget now. Cassidy, and they go off in search of God. And there are plenty of effed up things that happen in this book. I'm not sure I can describe most of them. There is one character that maybe will give you an idea of how effed up this book is. This character's name is Arseface, and he is named as such because of the failed attempt at suicide has left his face looking like an arse. Yeah, so that is Preacher. I haven't finished the series yet. I plan to. And now that I've thought about it again and brought it back up again, I think that might be coming up on my list of things to finish here, or to read. So, okay, where does that take us to? That takes us to number 10. Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Left Up, a book that is just misery porn solely designed to convince you how effed up the world is. I'm not totally sure if I'm supposed to comment on whether or not that book is just on A Little Life is just misery porn. I haven't read it yet, but I did get a copy of it recently, and I would very much like to read it. So maybe we can talk about that in the future. But if I'm just supposed to pick a book that is misery porn, that is something I struggle with as well on this tag. Angela's Ashes came to my mind. That book is full of misery. But I think because I have a copy of it, this also sprang to mind, is The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. And of course, this stems from the TV series Twin Peaks, which I think was aired 1990, 1991. This is the book that was released in between the first and the second season. It's written by Kelly Lynch, I believe, David Lynch's daughter. David Lynch, of course, the director and creator of the Twin Peaks series. And this details the life, this is the diary of Laura Palmer, the person who was murdered, whose body is found at the beginning of the series, and the life that she led up to that point. It's pretty misery filled, and minor spoilers for a TV series that's been around for 30 years now. Her life of drugs and alcohol and prostitution and rape are all not in great detail, as I recall. It's been some time since I've read it, but it's all there, and it gives you a pretty clear picture of what was happening with her up until the point where she was murdered. And it's a lot of misery, and it's all pretty effed up. But it's actually an entertaining read. And it gives you, in the context of the series, it gives you some information that you might, outside of the series itself. So it's if you're a fan of the series, it's worth a read, and you probably already know what it is and may even have your own copy of it. So The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. All right, so that's the end of the tag. So now comes the time where I'm supposed to tag somebody. I found a newcomer, seems to be a newcomer today. I want to go ahead and tag her. Pax Panic, I think is the name. She's coming to us from her panic room, and her channel has a horror angle, and I think she'd be a pretty good fit for this tag, the Efftup tag. So far I'm enjoying her channel quite a bit. She's very natural in front of the camera, much more natural than I was in my BookTube newbie tag, I think. So I really look forward to seeing what book she comes up with for this tag. So Pax, I tag you on the Efftup Book Tag. All right, everybody. So thanks for sticking around. Glad you could watch me and my Efftup Book Tag. And again, Shelly, thanks a lot for tagging me. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. Take care. Good night.